Outside. I think, Melania, if you could sit there for a minute. And Donald, could you sit there and just sign a guest book?
It's very homey, very modest. But when you see this is a lot. So it's...
Let's see.
Well, there you go. Cordial exchange there between Sarah Netanyahu, the wife of the Israeli Prime Minister, and President Donald Trump there alongside Melania Trump. In a meeting, now they have actually had a formal meeting, as James Bass was explaining to us, and we're expecting some more remarks, but certainly we've been hearing Donald Trump speaking earlier on today when he landed in Israel, speaking about how he wants to see peace between Israel and the Palestinians, and we've certainly had some bold statements to that effect from both the Israeli Prime Minister and Donald Trump. Let's get back to James Bass, who's following all this for us. And despite the smiles and the handshakes, James, there was also some fears of awkwardness and friction ahead of this visit.
There certainly have been. There's certainly been some bumps in the planning of this visit. First, you've got to remember that the Israelis were expecting all sorts of things from Donald Trump. They knew he was going to be better than President Obama because they had an appalling relationship with him, but they were really had high expectations because he said he was going to move the U.S. embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem in his first few days. That didn't happen, and then they got the pushback from President Trump on settlements, saying they should slow down or stop settlements. So certainly the Israelis, I think, probably still prefer President Trump to President Obama, but perhaps not quite what they had expected from President Trump. Also, some problems in the organisation of this trip. That visit to the Western Wall that you saw, well, the Israelis apparently would have liked Prime Minister Netanyahu to be there by his side, and apparently during a planning meeting between the two governments and representatives of the two governments, diplomats had a row about it, and the US representative at that meeting said, well, you can't tell us what to do at the Western Wall, it's occupied territory. Of course it is, because it was not part of Israel in 1948 and was taken in 1967, and under international law is occupied territory. But the Israelis, of course, see this as this very holy place and were offended by that comment coming from a US official. And then, of course, another bump in the road going up to this was a week ago, when it was revealed by the Washington Post that classified information that had been gathered was shared by Donald Trump with the Russians. Now, this was code word information. That's one of the top classifications, information that can only be referred to by, or the source of it, by a code word. And it was revealed in this newspaper article that the Russians, with their great intelligence gathering capabilities, probably from what they were told, could work out the source of this information, although they were not told which of the US's partners was the source. Well, subsequently, it emerged in diplomatic circles that the source was probably Israel, but the White House has never confirmed that until the beginning of this meeting, when both Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Trump were asked about it. Prime Minister Netanyahu deflected the question. President Trump said, I never mentioned the word or name Israel. They're all saying I did. So it shows you have another story wrong. So President Trump there confirming the line of Israel, yet another gaffe with regard to sensitive information. And certainly that is going to be one of the stories back in the US, where, yes, they are talking about this trip, but they're still talking about all of Donald Trump's domestic worries as well.
Yes, and that will that's not going to end anytime soon. Obviously, there is political legal scandal engulfing Trump's administration right now, and the people around him will be keen to ensure that there are no diplomatic missteps or misunderstandings on this trip, and they'll be keen to very much portray it as a success. And the message from President Trump, and also perhaps more recently Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, is that this is the president who will succeed in striking what he's called the ultimate deal where past presidents have failed. Any clues as to what might happen next, immediate next steps, or his vision for making this happen?
No, I don't think we're going to get any of those on this trip. I think there are two things that are here that are perhaps new in some ways. One of them is a new approach from the US to Iran, a very tough approach, which is going to please them here in Israel, and it did please them in Saudi Arabia and some of the Gulf allies of the US. And I think the US is going to say, look, we're all on the same side, allied against the threat from Iran. So that's one factor. The other factor, I think, is President Trump himself. He is such an unusual leader, and he's approaching things in such a different way. You wouldn't have thought it from looking at the campaign that President Trump was someone who could restart peace efforts, and people remain very, very skeptical. But they say he's so unusual, he's so different. Maybe, just maybe, because of his very different style, he can do things a different way. For now, I think he can get away with saying, I'm the man who can do this, I'm the deal maker, and I'm going to personally invest myself in this. Remember, look back through recent history, and I don't think there was any president, I don't think there's ever been a president of the US who's come to this region as quickly as Donald Trump. President Obama waited till his second term. This is a real